My father never hugged me, not once. He never told me he loved me, not until the day he died. I came back to the house I grew up in. I thought I'd just clean up an old place, pick up a few things, and leave. But at the very end of the hallway, in a dusty little room, I opened an old drawer and found something that changed everything. A strange gap in the wood. I pulled hard. A hidden compartment slid out. Inside was a stack of old letters, yellowed with age, tied together with a faded string. On every envelope, that shaky handwriting I knew so well, addressed to me. I just sat down on the floor. My hands trembled as I opened the first one, and the very first line blurred my eyes. Daniel, I didn't know how to say this when I was alive. If you're reading this, I probably never got the chance. I'm sorry for leaving you alone all these years. It wasn't that I didn't care. I just didn't know how to do it any other way. Suddenly, my whole childhood came rushing back. Silent dinners. Me standing at the door, waiting for a hug. But all I ever got was a cold nod. Turns out, he knew. He always knew. And that was just the first letter. Beneath that stack, there were dozens more. One by one, line by line. They broke me down right there on the floor. I read and cried like a kid. If I had found them sooner, maybe my life wouldn't have fallen apart the way it did. My name is Daniel. I'm 36. People say I'm lucky. A steady job at a tech company. A good paycheck. A high-rise apartment that looks out over the city. But what they don't know is, at night, that place gets so quiet. I can hear the fridge ticking, and even my own breathing echo like a cave. 2 years ago, my 7-year marriage ended. Not because of cheating. Not because of fights. One day, she just said, I can't take this silence anymore. There were only 2 of us in that house. But for a long time, she had felt like she was living alone. Her words, they were like a mirror. They showed me what I had become. Someone so used to silence that I turned it into a habit that killed my marriage. Silence was what I grew up with. My whole childhood was inside a small house, where dinner was just the sound of forks and a ticking clock. On my 10th birthday, my father put an envelope in front of me, then turned away. Not a single word. No happy birthday. When I brought home good grades, a certificate, I used to run to show him. All I got was a nod. Then his eyes went straight back to the numbers on his desk. Never, not once, a hug. Never a single. I'm proud of you. My mom died when I was just starting middle school. After the funeral, there were only 2 of us left. And from that day on, he grew even quieter. That house felt like every window had been sealed shut. The air thick. No way out. I grew up breathing that air. And when I became an adult, I turned into him. I didn't know how to open up to anyone. I didn't know how to share. So I kept it all in. After the divorce, my life shrank to a few things. A desk, a glowing screen, canned food, and a cold bed. Until a week ago, my phone rang. An unknown number. A nurse's voice said, I'm sorry. George, your father, passed away from heart failure. We need you to come and collect his belongings. I froze. No tears, no panic. Just empty. Part of me thought, that's it. There's nothing left to hold on to. Nothing left to hope for. I drove back to the old town. The same road lined with oak trees. The same worn-out houses on both sides. And then I saw it. The wooden house. The same crooked roof. The yard covered in dry leaves. Just like when I was a kid. Inside, it was as if time had stopped. Family photos on the wall, all faded yellow. In one of them, a little boy stood stiff next to a man who wouldn't smile. I took a deep breath and started cleaning room by room. The living room, the bedrooms. The only one left was his study, a room I once swore I'd never step into again. The old wooden desk was still there, the lamp still tilted to one side. I began stacking up files and contracts, throwing them into a box. Nothing but papers. No photos. No personal notes. Until my hand touched a small bump. At the bottom of the drawer, that little bump stopped me cold. I tapped it. The hollow sound was different. My heart started to race. Something in me knew there was something hidden underneath. I found a box cutter, slid the blade into the crack. One quick pry. The wooden panel popped loose. A secret compartment appeared, dark and stale, with the smell of old paper rising out. Inside was a stack of letters, tied together with a faded string, at least 20 of them. The paper yellowed, the corners curled with time. On every envelope, that slanted, shaky handwriting I knew by heart. My father's, and the name on them was mine. I pulled the whole stack out. Dust swirled in the air. I sank down onto the cold floor, just staring at those envelopes, not sure if I was scared or hoping for something. All my life I believed. There was nothing left to say between us, and yet here they were. These letters in my hands, making my fingers shake uncontrollably. I took a deep breath, opened the first one. The paper was brittle, the ink blurred from moisture. The very first line tightened my throat. Daniel, I've never been good with words, but if you're holding this letter, I probably ran out of time. I'm sorry for all those years I left you alone. My silence was never because I didn't care. I just didn't know any other way. And suddenly, everything came rushing back. Silent dinners, Christmas Eve. He'd leave a leftover cake from work on the table, say nothing, and go upstairs. My 10th birthday, an envelope, no eye contact. The time I fell off my bike, I sat in the corner, bandaging myself. He walked by, stopped for a few seconds, then walked away. I thought I had forgotten. Turns out, I just buried it deep. Clutching that letter in my hand, I felt my chest tighten. Something that had been asleep in me suddenly woke up. I looked down at the rest of the envelopes. Not just one. Over 20 letters. Never sent. One said, when you turn 18. Another, on your graduation. Another, on your wedding day. He had written for every milestone in my life, and all of them sat here, hidden in a drawer. The weight of it hit me so hard, I had to press my hands to the floor, just to keep from collapsing. I realized I didn't have the strength to keep reading. Not yet. I gathered all the letters into a small box, held it tight, like something fragile. I wasn't ready to open again. For the first time in over 30 years, I felt like he was talking to me, but only now, when he's already gone. The room felt different. The same walls, the same desk, but for the first time, it didn't feel cold anymore. All my life, I thought there was nothing but emptiness between us. Who would have thought that emptiness had been filled with words he never got to say? I sat there in the late afternoon light, streaming through the window, the ticking of the clock, and I knew the story between me and him was only just beginning. With these letters, that night, I brought the box of letters back to my apartment. The whole drive home, it sat on the passenger seat, like a silent companion. Every time I glanced over, it felt like he was sitting there, looking straight at me. When I opened my door, the apartment was as silent as ever. I didn't turn on the lights. The yellow glow from the street lamps spilled across the floor. I put the box on the dining table and sat down. My hands trembled as my fingers brushed over the worn paper edges. I'd never been this scared of something so small. I opened the second letter. The day you graduated high school. Daniel, today you walked out of high school. I was standing far away, hiding behind the trees, watching you laugh with your friends. That laugh made me want to walk over, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. I was afraid I'd embarrass you. I knew you wished I'd be in the photo with you, but I didn't have the courage. Congratulations, son. I'm so proud of you. I closed my eyes. That day came back in a rush. The cheers, the flowers, friends patting each other on the back. I searched the crowd for him. I saw him standing far away, and then I saw him turn around and walk away. Back then, I looked away, telling myself, he doesn't care. Reading this now, I just want to go back and run toward him. I wish I had called out, Dad. I wiped my face and opened another letter. When you turned 18, I wanted to talk to you as one man to another. But that night I heard you on the phone, your voice full of dreams about becoming an engineer. I stood outside your door for half an hour, wanting to knock, but I couldn't lift my hand. I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I'd only say the wrong thing. That night, I stayed at my desk till morning, just staring at that closed door. I bit my lip. So many times in my life, all I needed was for him to open that door. Just once. I picked up another envelope. The handwriting on this one stabbed right through me. The day your mother died. Daniel, that day, watching you stand by your mother's coffin. I wanted to hold you, but I didn't know how. I saw you looking at me, like you were asking, why won't you hug me? Duh. I stepped forward, but one step away. I stopped. From that day on, I promised myself I'd make it up to you, but as the years went by, I never knew how to begin. I dropped the letter, my hands holding my head. I remember that day so clearly. The drizzle, all I needed, was a hug, anything to tell me I wasn't alone. He stood there, just one step away, and that one step has haunted me my whole life. Tears streamed down my face. I realized we'd been like two people locked in separate rooms, standing at the door, separated by a single wall of silence. I opened another letter. The day you left for college. Daniel, you don't know this, but that year I sold my only car. I paid your tuition early, just to make sure you'd never miss a semester. I stood in the corner of the campus, watching you drag your suitcase, and again, I didn't have the courage to call your name. Tears fell onto the edge of the paper. My whole life, I thought he didn't care. But the truth was, he was always there, watching silently. As I took every step, the anger I'd carried for 30 years began to crumble, and in its place came something else, something I thought had died in me, a kind of love, a kind of sorrow. I got to the 10th letter. Then my hand stopped at another envelope. On the front, your wedding day. Inside, I could feel there was more than just paper. It was thicker, like something was tucked inside. I didn't open it. My heart was pounding. I set it down on the table, and at the very bottom of the box, I found one last envelope, the thickest one. No date, no event. Only one line written on the front. If you've made it this far. I sat there, staring at the two envelopes left on the table. The streetlight outside spilled a long strip of gold across the table, like a line dividing the past and the present. Outside, occasional cars passed by. Inside, the only sound was my heartbeat. Heavy, steady. I reached for the envelope that said, your wedding day. Something slipped out. A small photo, landing face down on the floor. I picked it up. It was my wedding day. A picture I had never seen. In the blurry background, hidden behind a line of trees, was my father, holding a bouquet, out of focus. But I knew it was him. I unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting slanted, uneven, as if written through tears. On your wedding day, I came early. I stood far away, watching you in that suit. You smiled, so happy, and I knew you had found someone who would make sure you'd never be alone again. I wanted to walk up, put my hand on your shoulder, and tell you I was proud of you. But I stayed where I was. I was afraid I'd make you uneasy, afraid I'd ruin your day. So I just stood there, holding a bouquet someone had left behind. I brought this photo home, taped it into a notebook, and that night, I stared at it for hours. I wish I had been braver. I set the letter down and stared at the picture. That forgotten bouquet, that figure standing alone in the distance, the shaky photo, and yet it's the clearest picture I have of him. That night, I wished he had come, and when he didn't, I told myself he didn't care. Turns out, he did come. He just chose, once again, to stand behind. I wiped away my tears and picked up the last envelope, the thickest one. On it, just one line. If you've made it this far. I took a deep breath. The sound of paper tearing was loud in the silence, like the last thin string being pulled apart. Inside were several pages, his handwriting filling every inch. The first page read, if you've made it this far, it means you know everything I've kept hidden. I never got the chance to say this to you in person. I want you to know, not a single day has passed, that I haven't blamed myself. My silence hurt you. I was a coward, and I let the distance between us grow. Day after day, I turned to the next page. I loved you in ways I never learned how to express. I stood outside your door. I came, then walked away. I did everything in silence, and that silence was the greatest mistake of my life. Another page, the writing firmer this time. Son, don't be like me. Don't let silence swallow you, the way it swallowed me. Tell the people you love that you love them. Say it while you still can. Live as if every day is the last chance you'll get. My tears blurred the ink. The last page had only one line. If you've made it this far, it means I love you more than you ever knew. And I've been proud of you from your very first day to my very last breath. I folded the letter shut and sat still. The apartment around me felt different. The cold white walls seemed softer, as if a hug from the past had just settled over my shoulders. For the first time in 30 years, I felt held by nothing but words. I clutched the letters to my chest and cried out loud. Every ounce of anger, every wall I had built between us, gone. And then, as I lifted the box to put it away, I saw a thin sheet of paper lying at the very bottom. On it was a list, just a few names and addresses, scribbled in a hurry. I picked it up and stared at it for a long time. Maybe my next journey begins here, with these names, because if these letters were his last words to me, then this list is the question he left behind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The box of letters stayed on the table. I sat there staring at the sheet of paper with 3 names on it, as if they were the last 3 doors my father had left behind. Part of me wanted to fold it up, put it away, pretend I had never seen it. A part of me was afraid that if I opened those doors, I'd have to face even more truths about him. Truths I wasn't ready for. But just like the day I pulled that drawer open, I couldn't stop myself. The next morning, I got in the car and left the city. The road back to my old town stretched forever. Dry yellow fields on both sides. The wind bent the oak trees. For the first time in years, I drove away from all the noise, listening only to the engine and my own heartbeat. The first name on the list, Bill Harper, Carpenter's Workshop. The shop was on the edge of town. Its tin roof faded. The door left slightly open. Inside was the groan of a saw and the warm smell of fresh wood. I stopped at the entrance, stood there for a long moment. My palms were wet. I didn't even know what I should say. When I knocked, an older man with silver hair turned around. Surprise flickered in his eyes. Slowly, he took off his safety glasses. "I'm Daniel, George Caldwell's son," I said, my voice hoarse. He studied me for a long time, then sighed, motioning for me to come in. The saw went silent. The whole workshop was suddenly filled with nothing but the sound of the wind, coming through the wooden walls. Bill sat down, his hands on the table. "You look a lot like him," he said softly. "So, George finally left you that list." I nodded and set the paper down in front of him. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if reaching far back into a memory. "Years ago, my boy got sick. We didn't have the money for treatment. One day, George came here and handed me all the savings he had. He made me promise never to tell anyone, not even you." He drew a deep breath, his voice rough. I asked him why, and George just said, "I was never a good father, but at least don't let another child lose their chance to live." Nah, I sat there frozen. In my mind, I saw him pushing that workshop door open, laying an envelope on the table, and turning away without saying a word. That image hit me so hard, I could barely breathe. Bill went to the back and came back with a small wooden box. "George left this and told me, if you ever come, give it to you." Inside was a silver watch, scratched with age. "It used to be your grandfather's," he said. I took it. It felt heavy in my hand, cold. But I could picture how many years it had stayed in his. I left the workshop and drove to the second name on the list. Mr. Thompson, old teacher. My old high school looked the same. Only the paint on the basketball court was new. I stopped the car, stood under the covered walkway for a long time. Memories came flooding back. Those afternoons when I walked past, seeing my father in the distance, never calling my name. I found the teacher's office. An old man with white hair opened the door. "I'm Daniel," I said. "You used to teach me math. My father left a list. Your name was on it." He paused. Then he let me in and poured me a glass of water. "Do you remember, in 11th grade, the fight you got into, when you almost got expelled?" I nodded. I remembered that day, sitting on the steps, angry, scared. I saw my father outside the school gate. I thought he had come to scold me. "It was your father, Mr. Thompson said slowly. "He came to the principal. He begged them to give you another chance. He said, if this goes on his record, he'll never make it to the college he dreams of. Please, put that responsibility on me instead." My fists clenched. I had never known this. I only remembered seeing him outside the gate, silent. I'll never forget what he told me. "Mr. Thompson said, looking straight at me, I don't know how to talk to him, but please, let me stand behind him, just one more time." Those words cut into me like a knife. All those years, I thought he stood there to judge me. But the truth was, he stood there to shield me. I left the school. The late afternoon sun stretched long across the basketball court. In my hand, his old watch felt so heavy, it pulled my arm down. Now, there was only one name left on the list. Next to it, my father had written just 2 words: final debt. I held that piece of paper tight, and for some reason, just looking at that name, I felt something rise in my chest. A sense that this last meeting was going to change everything. The last name on the list: Margaret Lewis, final debt, an address in a small town, more than an hour's drive away. The whole way there, I gripped that piece of paper in my sweaty hand. My heart pounded. Who was she? And did I have the courage to hear the rest of my father's story? The small house appeared by the side of the road. An old wooden door. A porch covered in dry leaves. I pulled over, but didn't get out right away. My hands stayed on the wheel for a long time. Part of me wanted to leave, because if I walked in, I might hear things that would hurt even more. But if I didn't, I knew I'd stay stuck here for the rest of my life. Finally, I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked to the porch. My footsteps echoed on the wooden steps. I reached out and rang the bell. For a moment, there was only the sound of the wind in the trees. Then the door opened. An elderly woman's voice. "You must be Daniel?" I froze. "You know me." She nodded. "George mentioned you in the last letter he sent me. He wrote that if you ever came, I should tell you the rest of the story." He never got to finish. Inside, the house was simple. The smell of old wood, so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. She poured tea, set a cup in front of me, then sat across the table. "Do you know," she said slowly, "after your mother passed, your father completely fell apart." I couldn't speak. She went on. "Back then, George came to see me. I was a social worker at the time. He said to me, 'I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to talk to him, but I don't want him to think he's been abandoned.'" Her eyes grew wet. "Once, he even brought me one of your old shirts. He held it and asked me, 'How do I hug him without making it awkward?'" I had never seen a man so tough, and yet so desperate. Her words cut into me like a knife. I lowered my head. My hands clenched until my knuckles turned white. "He tried, Daniel," she continued, "over and over. But every time he was about to open up, fear stopped him. One night, he sat right here, all night long, asking me, 'Have I ruined everything? Did I break it beyond repair?' And then he cried, like a child." She got up, went to a drawer, and came back with an old envelope. "George asked me to keep this. He said if his son ever came, I should give it to you." My hands trembled. As I opened it, the sound of old paper seemed deafening in the quiet room. Inside was half of a torn check and a small folded note. "This money took me years to save. I meant to leave it for you. But if you're here, it means you already know everything. What you need isn't money. It's the truth. Margaret, thank you for teaching me that to love a son, I don't have to be perfect. Daniel, if you're reading this, forgive me. In a way, I could never forgive myself. Bye." I folded the note. Tears ran down my hands. All his life, he had been trying to learn how to be a father, and still, he lost to his own silence. She put her hand on my shoulder. "George always said his biggest regret was letting silence ruin everything. But he believed that one day you would understand." I sat there, listening to the clock tick. Inside me, all that anger finally dissolved, leaving behind nothing but a quiet emptiness. When I stepped out of Margaret's house, the sun was already low. The wind moved through the trees. Leaves rustled under my feet. In my hands, all that was left was an old note, half a torn check, and a silver watch. I stood still at the gate, took a deep breath. I knew where I needed to go next, back to the one place I swore I'd never return to. The cemetery, where my father now rests. That afternoon, I drove straight to the cemetery. The sky was thick with gray. The clouds hung heavy, ready to break. The dirt road that led to the graves was so quiet, I could hear nothing but gravel crunching under the tires. The gate stood slightly open. I stepped inside, holding tight to the box of letters. The silver watch, and that last piece of paper. Every step across the damp grass felt endless. My father's grave was all the way in the far corner, a simple cold stone. I stopped a few feet away. The wind cut through my jacket, chilling me to the bone. My lips moved, but no sound came out. 36 years of life, and this was the first time I wanted to call out Dad, but the word stuck in my throat, as if someone had it clenched shut. I bent down. My hand, trembling, touched the stone. Cold. As cold as everything that had ever stood between us. I sat down, placed everything in front of me. The stack of letters, the scratched silver watch, the torn half of a check. I stared for a long time. Then I opened my mouth. "I'm here, Dad." My voice was rough. I thought I'd never have anything to say to you again. But these last few days, everything has changed. I opened the box, took out the letters, spread them across the stone. The wind made the pages flutter. Do you know, for all these years, I thought I hated you. I thought silence was all you ever had for me. And I carried that silence into my marriage, until it destroyed the family I built. I drew in a long breath, my fingers gripping the edge of the stone. But I read them all, every letter, and I saw where you were. At every single moment of my life, you were there, always behind me, always in the back. A cold gust swept over me. My eyes burned. I'm angry, but more than that, I regret. Regret that just one more step, one step forward, could have changed everything. I took out the watch and laid it carefully in front of the grave. I'll keep it for you. For the first time, I want to feel like you and I are ticking in the same time. I looked up at the gray headstone, my lips trembling. You told me not to be like you, to tell the people I love that I love them. I heard you. But Dad, I never once said that to you. The wind picked up, sending the letters flapping wildly. I held them down with both hands. Over the wind, I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, like a drum. I closed my eyes, took one deep breath. All the fear, all the anger, all the regret came rushing to a single point, and I knew, if I didn't say it now, I'd never get another chance. For the first time in my life, I let my heart speak. I opened my eyes. The gray sky hung over me. The wind moved through the cemetery, sounding like someone sighing. The letters in front of me trembled in the breeze. Dad, my voice came out raw. I bit my lip hard, but the tears still spilled over. Why? Why didn't you ever say it to me? Just once. I slammed my fist into the grass. 36 years of pain erupted all at once, like it had been waiting to explode. You stood behind everything. But just once. Just once? Why couldn't you step forward? The shout tore out of me, then faded. Only the wind remained. I bent forward, my whole body shaking. And in that moment, all the anger I'd carried shattered like glass. Through broken breaths, I whispered, slowly, for the first time in my life, I love you, Dad. Just 3 words. But it took me more than 30 years to finally speak them. They cut through the air, like a blade, slicing through everything that had stood between us. Tears ran down, soaking into the grass. I love you, and I forgive you. Do you hear me? I forgive you. Everything I held against you, I'm leaving it here. I won't carry it anymore. I closed my eyes, both hands holding on to the edge of the gravestone, like I was holding on to a shoulder, cold as stone. But in that moment, there was something strange, as if a faint warmth was coming from the stone itself. I promise you, I won't live the way you did. I'll speak while there's still time. I won't let silence steal anything else from me. I gathered up the letters, all but one. The last letter he wrote. If you've made it this far. I set it neatly on top of the stone, then placed the silver watch over it. Keep this with you, and for the rest of my life, I'll carry the rest for you. I stood up, and for the first time, when I touched the stone one more time, it no longer felt cold. It felt like he was standing there, his hand resting on mine. Too late, but still there. I turned and walked away. The wind was still blowing, but softer now, like a hand brushing my shoulder. Above me, the gray clouds began to break apart, letting a thin ray of light through. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at the same table. The box was empty now. I picked up my phone and stared at a number I hadn't dialed in a long time. My fingers trembled. But this time, I didn't let the silence win. The phone rang, and then someone answered. Daniel, is that you? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Yeah, it's me. I just wanted to say this before another day slips away. In that room, lit by a soft yellow glow, I realized something. The first call I ever made wasn't to the person on the other end of the line. It was to the man lying in that grave. And this time, I wasn't silent anymore. The call last night lasted only a few minutes, but to me, it was longer than 30 years of silence combined. And this morning, I'm standing in front of a small cafe on the edge of town. My hands are damp with sweat, my heart pounding. I've walked into so many important rooms in my life, but never have my legs felt this heavy. Through the glass, I see Emily sitting by the window. She's turning a cup in her hands, staring out at the street. Thinner than before, I take a deep breath and open the door. The bell rings softly. Emily looks up. For a second, her eyes freeze. "What do you want to say?" she asks right away, her voice calm. I sit down across from her. My hand taps lightly on the chair, then stops. I swallow hard. I'm sorry. Her brows knit. For what? For everything. I say it slowly, each word clear. I stayed silent for too long. I thought I was strong, but I was only repeating my father. I brought that silence into our marriage, and I let it kill everything. Emily doesn't answer. She stirs her coffee slowly, small circles spreading on the surface. "I've just been on a trip," I go on, my voice shaky but firm. "I read the letters my father left, and I finally saw how silence can destroy a family. I won't let that happen again." I draw a breath, look straight at her. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me, or to come back. I came to finally say this out loud. For the first time, I love you." She stops stirring. A long silence. Just the sound of footsteps and cars outside. Emily looks at me, her eyes softer, but still carrying an old sadness. "You've changed," she says slowly. "But Daniel, there are cracks that can't be mended." I nod. "I know. I don't expect anything. I don't want to carry this silence to the end of my life." We sit there for a long time, neither of us saying another word. Then Emily stands up first, leaving behind an empty cup and a ring of water on the table. I walk out, watching her figure disappear. At the end of the street, inside me, for the first time, there's no choking anger, only a quiet sadness, gentle as an evening breeze. That night, back in my apartment, I sit in the living room. The box of letters, still on the table. I open the lid. It's empty now. For the first time, that empty space doesn't scare me anymore. I pick up a pen and paper. My hand shakes as the tip of the pen touches the page, and I start to write, addressed to myself. "Daniel, if you're reading this one day, remember this. Don't let silence take anything away from you again. Speak, live, love, even if your voice shakes. Because one day, the door will close, and all you'll be left with are the things you never said." I fold the letter and place it inside the box. Running my hand gently over the lid, I whisper, "This time, this box will no longer be a grave for words left unsaid." The days that followed didn't suddenly turn my life into something new. I still went to work. I still came home to the same old apartment. But something had quietly changed. Silence was no longer a prison. I started picking up the phone and hesitating. My sister's name lit up on the screen. For a long moment, my finger hovered there. All the memories came back, of all the calls I let ring out without answering. This time, I pressed the button. "Daniel," her voice trembled. And for the first time in years, I didn't hide behind small talk. I told her everything. About Dad, about the letters, about me. We talked late into the night, and I realized some wounds only need one honest word. To start closing, I reached out to a few old friends. Just short messages. "I miss you." I didn't expect it. But sometimes, just one sentence can erase years of distance, as if it had never been there. One afternoon, I went back to the old basketball court. At my high school, the sun spread gold across the empty court. I stood in the same spot, where, at 17, I once saw my father standing far away. The wind brushed through my hair. The smell of cut grass was sharp in the air. I drew in a breath, closed my eyes, and this time, I took a step forward, the step I couldn't take back then. In my mind, I saw him still there, but there was no distance now. Quietly, I whispered, "Dad, I've learned how to step forward." From then on, my little apartment was no longer a cell. The box of letters was no longer an empty silence. I turned it into a place to keep the letters I write. Whenever there's something in my heart I need to say, letters to friends, to my sister, to the woman I once loved, and to myself. These letters never get sent, but they remind me, never let silence win again. One night, I walked alone. The street was empty. My footsteps echoed off the pavement, blending with my slow breath. Early winter. The cold bit into my skin, but it wasn't the same cold I used to know. I lifted my head. Above me, a faint scattering of stars. The streetlights lined up. Like a ribbon of hope. I stopped and looked at my hands. Hands that once clenched so tight, turning white, holding on to anger. Now for the first time, I let go, and I felt light. I thought about that list of 3 names. Just a small piece of paper, but it had led me out of a life of silence. It brought me to something I had never been able to do before. To say what matters most, before it's too late. That night, back home, I opened the box again. Inside, the letter I wrote to myself was still there. I added a new one, then closed the lid. But this time, I didn't close it the way I used to. I closed it with a smile. People like to think they still have time. But the truth is, in every life, there are only a few moments to say what needs to be said. And if there's something you need to say it tonight. Because tomorrow, that door might already be closed. Some nights, I still sit alone in this apartment. The yellow lamp spills light over the wooden table. That old box of letters sits there, silent. But it's no longer the box of heavy years. It has become a paper journal, a place where I put everything I once kept buried inside. When I was a boy, I thought the distance between my father and me was a wall of concrete. I grew up believing he never wanted to step closer, and so I stayed where I was, repeating the same pattern until that same silence broke my own marriage. It wasn't until I opened that box that I finally understood. That wall had never been made of concrete. It was a door, and we were both standing on opposite sides, too afraid to open it. The 3 names on that list he left, small wrinkled letters on a scrap of paper, turned out to be the keys. They led me through the fragments of his life, and somehow they brought me back to myself. I learned that love doesn't have to be perfect. Some people only know how to love from a few steps behind, and sometimes that kind of love arrives late. If you're hearing this story, maybe you too are silent with someone. Maybe it's your father, your mother, or someone who used to lie next to you every night. Don't wait until there's nothing left but a cold gravestone, because when you stand in front of one, you'll wish someone had put a hand on your shoulder, just once, and told you to step forward. One late autumn afternoon, I went back to the cemetery. In my hand, a small bouquet. The grass was wet under my shoes. I was about to set the flowers down, like I always did, but then I noticed a folded note, tucked under a small stone beside the grave. I opened it. The handwriting was unfamiliar. "Thank you, George. Because of you, I was able to keep my family together." I stood there for a long time. Turns out, what he did in silence didn't just reach me. It had changed other lives too. Lives I never knew about. I set the flowers down and smiled. "Dad, this time I didn't come here to cry. I came to tell you, I've started a different life now." I told him about the call with my sister, about the new letters in the box, about how I've learned to speak the words that matter before it's too late. And there, in the quietest place, I realized something. Even though he's gone, the conversation between us has never really stopped. When I turned to leave, it was as if a camera followed behind me. The wind moved through, sending yellow leaves drifting slow through the late afternoon light. My steps felt lighter than ever. The cemetery didn't feel frightening anymore. It was just a quiet place, a place to leave behind what's old and take with me something new. That night, back home, I opened the box again and added a new letter. On the envelope, I wrote just 3 words, "For tomorrow," and I closed the lid. There are doors that stay shut for a lifetime because both people are too afraid to step forward, and sometimes to break a life of silence. All it takes is one sentence. "I love you, Dad."